Greetings, everybody. Today I want to talk about rounding numbers. Okay, that'll be an important thing for us in a math class because in a math class, of course, you work with numbers, and when you work with numbers, sometimes that means you need to round numbers. Okay, so I have a bunch of sample questions here, and I'll go through the individual questions in addition to the big picture about how the procedure works. Okay. So let's look at this first question, which says to take this number and round it to the nearest 10. Okay. Where I think you should get started with doing that is to learn the place values within a number. So this number right here has digits. So this number is made of individual numbers. There's a 3, there's a 4, there's a 0, there's a 5, there's a 6, there's a 0, there's a 5, there's a 4. So every one of those numbers within that bigger number has a name for it. Okay, and I've got that labeled right here. Those names for the individual digits of this broader number are called place values. Okay, we've got the thousandth place here, the hundredth place here, the 10th place here. Then there's the decimal point, the ones place, the tens place, the hundreds place, the thousands place, and the 10,000th place. So we learned the place values because look how this question refers to rounding. It says round to the nearest 10. So what does that mean? It means that the digit that we're going to decide about in this problem of rounding that number is in this spot right here, the tens place. Okay, so that's the first thing. Learn the place values. All right, now the place values go beyond this. If there was another digit to the right of that 4, it would be the 10,000th place. And if there was a number to the left of this 3, that'd be the 100,000th place. Okay, but this will work for the numbers that we see. Okay, now you know the place values. Let's suppose you got that. You understand what I mean? You know the names of the place values. What do you do after that? So our second step is to learn the rule for how to round. So how you round a number is entirely based on the digit to the right of the place you're rounding to. So for example, if in this question I'm going to round to the tens place, meaning that I'm going to make a judgment about what to do with that 5, it's entirely based on the number just to the right. Okay, so I'm going to look at that ones place in order to decide what to do with the 5. All right, here's the rule for rounding. If the digit to the right of the place you're rounding to is less than 5, then you leave the place you're rounding to alone. And if the digit to the right of the place you're rounding to is more than 5 or more, then you increase the place you're rounding to by 1. Okay, so you either leave it alone or you increase by 1 depending on what the digit just to the right looks like. Now in either case, after you decide what you're going to do, all the digits to the right of the one you're rounding to become a 0. All right, now these are instructions. Sometimes instructions are a little too abstract for people to understand. You need to see an example. So let's look at this example right here. So I'm going to take this number, I'm going to round it to the tens place. Okay, so I'm going to decide on that digit right there, that 5, okay, because that's in the tens place, based on the digit just to the right, which is the 6. What's the rule? You look at the digit just to the right. If it's less than 5, you leave the tens place alone. If it's more than 5, you increase the tens place by 1. So okay, I'm going to decide about that 5 there, which is in the tens place, and I look at the digit just to the right, which is a 6, and I say, is it 5 or more? And it is. It's a 6. That's 5 or more. So that means I increase the tens place by 1. It goes from being a 5 to a 6, and then all the digits to the right become 0. Okay, so that's how it's done. You identify which digit you're rounding to, you look at the digit just to the right, you decide to bump up or leave alone the digit you're rounding to, and then everything else to the right becomes 0. That's the whole procedure. That's how it's done. Okay, so our final answer would be 34,060. So that's the answer that you see here, input on this question I took from our assignment. Notice that I did as we're supposed to put every digit to be 0 to the right of the one I've rounded after I've rounded it. And so I see like 34,060 decimal point 000 in keeping with what this says to do. But those extra zeros after the decimal point, they don't add anything to the number. They don't really have any significance. So we could leave those out when we put in our final answer. Okay, so that's the rounding procedure. Learn the place values, figure out which one you're rounding to, look at the digit just to the right, make your decision, and then you can round it from there. Let's look at another example, okay? So here's another example that I think you'll find on the assignment. Round this number 15,491 to the nearest thousand. Okay, so I need to look at that number 15,491 and I need to look at the thousands place and decide what to do. So there's the thousands place right there. It's that 5. And what was that rule? That I looked at the digit just to the right and I see if it is 5 or greater. If that digit just to the right of the one I'm rounding to is 5 or greater, then I'll bump this up by 1. And if it isn't, I'll leave it alone. So in this case, that digit just to the right is a 4. That is not 5 or greater. So I'm going to leave this one alone. And then what happens? All those other digits to the right become 0. Okay? So 15,491, if rounded to the thousands place, is just 15,000. Okay? All right. Now, oh, I forgot. See that symbol right there? It kind of looks like an equal sign, but it's wavy lines. So that means approximately. So when we give our rounded answer, it's not equal to whatever number we started with before we rounded, but they are close. Okay, so we can't put an equal sign. I can't say they're the same. So if I can't say they're the same, I can say they're close, and that's what this means, approximately. So that's what I have here. All right, so that's rounded to the nearest thousand. Let's look at one or two more. Round negative 0.273 to the nearest hundredth. Okay, so I noticed that this number is negative, but rounding doesn't affect whether a number is positive or negative. It has nothing to do with it. So if we have a negative number and we round it however we do, it's still going to be a negative number. That's not going to change. Okay, so it has nothing to do with it. So let's see. First, I'd have to say, well, where is the hundredth place? Remember the place values? So we got to learn the place values. The hundredth place is the second place to the right of the decimal point. So I'm going to look at that 7, and just based on that number just to the right, which is a 3, just based on if that's 5 or more or not, I'll decide what to do with the 7. So I'm going to round that 7. I'm either going to leave it as a 7 or bump it up by 1. But what about the 3? What does the 3 say? Well, that 3 is less than 5. So I'm going to just leave the 7 as it is. That 3 becomes a 0. So we could say the answer is negative 0.27. And I guess if I were to write another number, it would be a 0. But it doesn't add anything to this answer, so we can leave it off. Okay? All right, so that's rounding to the hundredth place. Now, as you see, once you learn the place values and you identify them, the rule is used exactly the same way every time. Okay, so it doesn't change. But maybe the vocabulary would change if we were dealing with money. Okay, so here's another problem from the assignment. It says round to the nearest cent. Now, cent is not a place value, right? The place values I gave you were ones, tens, hundreds, hundredth, thousandth, tenth. Those were the place values. Cent was not one of them. So we'll have to do some interpreting. Okay, so say I give you a number that has a decimal point and so on, but it's in dollars. Then to put that in terms of the denominations we use, I could say, well, the hundredth place is pennies or cents. The 10th place is dimes. The ones place is dollars. The fours are the tens place is $10. The hundreds place is $100. Okay. So this is 5 $100 bills, 4 $10 bills, 6 $1 bills, 7 dimes, and 2 pennies, we could say. All right, now let's look. Now that I've explained what the place values are, let's do a little example. Like, what if you rounded that to the nearest dollar? Okay, well, dollar, that's the ones place. I'm gonna see that 6. Let me look at the digit just to the right. Okay, that's a 7, and 7 is more than 5, so 546.7, that 6 bumps up to 547, and then those digits to the right become 0. So that'll be rounding, for example, this number to the nearest dollar. Okay, let's go here. I've got 0.5248, and it says round to the nearest cent. Cent, so that is what? The 100th place right there. It's that 2. Okay, so I'm going to decide about that 2, and I'm going to decide based on this number, this 4. That 4 is not 5 or more, so I leave the 2 as it is. How does 0.5248 round to the nearest cent? By our rules for rounding, it's just 0.52. Okay. All right, so maybe the vocabulary might change a little bit when we're dealing with money, but the method is not going to be any different. Okay. All right, now here's a few more screenshots from questions that you might see on assignments. And I'm not saying we're going to learn how to do these questions today. That's not the point. So here's a question that you might eventually see. How to work this question is not what I'm interested in doing right now. So if you read this question and you're thinking, I have no idea how to do that, and that seems way beyond where I am right now, that's okay, because you answering this question is not an objective for right now or the near future. Here's what I want you to notice about this instead. Notice that within this question, we'll have places we input our answer, but maybe just as important, there will be instructions about how to input your answer. Those instructions might say something about rounding. So as you work on the assignments, notice any instructions there are about rounding your answer and put your answer in accordingly. Okay, so you might solve this question however you solve it, but when I'm putting my final answer in, I'll make sure that I follow these instructions, which in this case say to round to 3 decimal places. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to tell you right now, is that follow the instructions. Always follow the instructions. Second thing I want to tell you is it does say round, and we've been talking about how to round numbers in this video, but it doesn't use the same wording. It says 3 decimal places. And I emphasized from the beginning that, well, we need to learn the place values, okay? The tens place, the ones place, the 10th place, the 100th place, and so on. We got to learn that. I never said anything about rounding to 3 decimal places, okay? Well, okay, here's how that works. If, for example, I was going to take this number 0.618, which I'm just using for example, rounding it to 2 decimal places would be that 1 right there, the 100th place. See, 2 decimal places, 0.618 if rounded to the 100th place is going to be 0.62. That's what we mean by 2 decimal places. The answer, after rounded, has 2 decimal places in it. If I was going to round to 1 decimal place, I would be rounding to the 10th place, okay? So that 6 right there. And if I take this number and I round it to the nearest 10th, the 10th place, then that's going to be like 0.618 rounds to 0.6. So that's what 1 decimal place means. Okay, this says 3 decimal places. So it means in your answer, like whatever big answer you may have gotten before you put it in, we're going to round it to the 1000th place, 3 decimal places. Okay, rounding to 3 decimal places means your final rounded answer will have 3 digits after the decimal. 0.500, 0.833. See what I mean? So you may see it like that. All right, but now you know what rounding to 1, 2, or 3 decimal places means. Here's another question. Now, again, this question may seem complicated. It may seem like something you're not ready to answer right now, and that's okay, because how to solve this is not my point. My point is, look at those instructions. Always follow any instructions about how to report your answer. Always follow the instructions about how to type in your answers, whatever those answers are. And if you're unsure, ask for help. Okay? This one, though, says round to the nearest integer. Okay, and that's another thing that hasn't come up in this video, but all right, here we go. An integer is a positive or negative whole number. So what it would mean if it says round to the nearest integer is to round to the ones place. Okay, and we did an example already of rounding to the ones place. But all right, I in this one video can't enumerate every instruction that you might see about putting your answers in. So maybe the most important thing about this video is if you're unsure, ask for help. Okay, so I've covered the big picture, the basis for just about everything that I think you'll encounter as far as rounding your answers and putting them in. But that most important thing, if you're unsure of something you see or a question that you think you should get right isn't working out for some reason, that's when you ask for help.